Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is February 11th, 2022. Today we have Anya Mills, Content and Art Service Director at the Martin Agency, and she's been producing for 30 plus years in some shape or form. After starting her career in Tokyo, Japan as a creative, she quickly realized helping ideas come to life was her true calling. Moving from New York City to Richmond, Virginia in 2001, she spent 10 or so years at the Martin Agency. She then took a leap to the client side where she produced a proprietary typeface and started their production and photo department. She recently returned happily to Martin, driving back into the beloved role of art buying and art production. She lives in Richmond, Virginia with her husband, 2 teenage children, and dogs. Hello. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you. We briefly both warned each other that our dogs might bark in the background, and then we moved on to something else. But I meant to ask you what kind of dogs you have.
I have a golden retriever, and her name is Annie, and I have a pit bull mix, and her name is Hula.
Oh, cute. Okay, so I've got 2 Goldens. One is Fenway and one is Teddy. So
Aw.
they think they protect me when the doorbell rings, and they bark, and then the people leave, so they think they've succeeded. So now, of course, whenever the doorbell rings, they bark. So beware. Well, thanks for being here with us today. I always like to start out kind of hearing a little bit about your story. I think it's very unique that, you know, the business that we're in and the path that people take to get to where we are. And when I was reading your intro, I was reminded that you started your career in Japan as a creative. That might not be where you want to start your story, but I definitely want to make sure that you touch on that when you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, it's actually a really wonderful, huge part of my life. And I kind of joke with my family that if I could move back there tomorrow, I would. I graduated with a BFA in sculpture and quickly realized I graduated during a recession, more or less, in the States. And someone with a BFA was probably having a little more of a struggle finding, some sort of job than the rest of the graduates. And I had an opportunity to go to Japan to work for a computer animation company, which was really interesting because at that time we were working off of DOS and not even OS2. It was like super old school. There weren't a lot of American companies that were allowed to autonomously work in Japan at the time, but my company was called Lect Sciences. And my boss had been basically asked by the Japanese government to stay after the expo in 1985. So it was a wonderful company to work for. We did a lot of hands-on design on paper that then turned into computer animation and, really kind of the beginning of it all. I remember.
I was going to say, you were there in the beginning. That must have been really exciting.
It was really exciting. And living in Japan, of course, was at the time in computer animation, sort of living in the future. But then being in Tokyo, which is just so filled with history, it was like living in the past. So I felt like this sort of talisman kind of toggling between 2 worlds where you would walk into this super, super modern idea of a company. And then from floor to ceiling, you would see stacks of paper. It was just a bizarre, wonderful archaeological study living in Japan. And I went for 1 year and I ended up staying for almost 6. So,
wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was probably one of the greatest times of my life. And I think I would still be there had it not been for the Kobe earthquake, where it just was this very sobering, natural disaster that killed over 5,000 people in a very, very brief moment. And just kind of, I guess my mortality set in and I realized, wow, I'm really far from home. So.
Wow. And did you feel the earthquake?
No, I lived through hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes over the course of the 6 years, but I was living in Tokyo, and Kobe, of course, was like farther away, but it was the impact was so great that
Yeah.
everyone felt it. Um, but there were lots of crazy, crazy things that happened when I look back. The uh, sarin gas poisoning happened on my train line at the time, the Marunouchi line,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I just remember sitting in restaurants and all of a sudden everything's starting to sway, and you look around the restaurant and everyone's kind of like trying to figure out, oh, well, yeah, that was probably like a 4.5 or that was like a 4. And you're so used to living through these earthquakes that you can actually kind of gauge them and the level. And that was just a weird, weird phenomena. But I'm not afraid of earthquakes anymore. So I think that was probably a good thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are happy to have had you back, including your family and and of course Martin, right? Martin Agency, they got you. Is that where you went after you left Japan? Did you come right home for that?
Um, well, no, I was actually in New York. I went to New York and I worked, I think to counteract my sort of dip into the future, I delved back into the past and I worked at urban archaeology,
Oh
which
wow.
at the time was there was an old building on oh my gosh, I can't even remember the name of the street. It was next to the Puck building in Soho, and it was just filled with antiques and beautiful, beautiful urban archaeology, literally. And I did a lot of work with architects and designers. They had a fantastic line of lighting and elements from historical buildings that they reproduced. I did a lot of work helping people resource for the movies and for TV, and just really kind of dug my heels into history again, which was wonderful. Until I started to work with my old business partner, I had the opportunity to work at a small agency, and my business partner and I basically we had a lot of different Japanese clients, and we did a lot of branding, and we did, photography and traditional advertising. But we were in the Information Technology Center, which was the first plug and play building in Manhattan on Broad Street across from the Stock Exchange. And it was a wonderful, wonderful small agency where we had a lot of autonomy. And that's kind of where I just took all of my history and roles and it melded into one. And I think my business card literally said Anya Mills everything, because I did everything from running the day to day of the business to producing everything to payroll to, I mean, it was just, I literally did everything. So,
Well, okay. So given all of these like varied experiences that you've had, right, that kind of make you who you are today and the person you are at your job today, what are you known for on your team?
I definitely think that I am known for my relationships and my resourcefulness. I just have a history of deep rooted relationships in the field. And I think because I come from a creative background, I can look at a concept or I can look at a layout and immediately know which photographers to reach out to or which illustrators to call. So I think that's really kind of my strength.
Yeah, I think I had this conversation with someone recently, this idea of relationships in our business and how important they are. And you know, I was wondering out loud with this other person, like, I'm saying, like, I'm so glad I started my business when I did, you know, eons ago, because I had the chance to make those relationships in person, right? Travel around the country multiple times a year, meeting people, working on different jobs, working with different photographers and different agencies. And now with COVID, it's so hard It would be hard. I'm not finding it hard to maintain those relationships or make new because I've been doing it for a while. But if I were to have just started right before the pandemic or during, or, it's just so hard to make those connections that you need because you draw from them so much in this business. And I rely on them so much. I don't know. I'm happy for the experiences and the time I've had so far to be able to kind of cultivate all of those relationships.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think being a producer without your relationships, you're totally on an island. And knowing that you at least know the first phone call to make in order to find the right resource, it's a gift.
It
And
is.
it's a
Yeah.
wonderful gift because knowing that the phone call is probably going to yield a job for someone, and for that person to be able to bring their creative ideas and just lens to the table is like, I mean, what's better than that?
No, it's true. It also goes beyond, knowing people and having connections. It's about being able to make new connections and make new relationships. So when somebody new comes into your world, it's about really taking a minute to get to know them and have them get to know you. So it's this genuine connection, because you're not taking your 20, some 30 plus year career and just calling the same people you've always called, right? You're meeting new people and trying to make connections that are going to bring you and your teams forward.
Totally.
Well, tell us a little bit about your role, and I love that in your intro we mentioned art buyer instead of art producer. Your title was so complicated, but you still talked about your love for being an art buyer, which I love that term from old days. I miss that part of our lifetime there. So tell me a little bit about your role as an art buyer and your content and art production.
Well, I truly look at every single thing that I'm doing from the brief to the execution. In really, I mean, it's such art to me. I definitely think it's funny because I've been back at Martin for 6 months. It felt immediately like when I went back, it was like coming home. Um, but I just immersed myself into, the creative again. And I had all these great jobs that were sort of in front of me. And um, between the illustration and I was actually just writing sort of a recap of what I was doing. And I think that I recently did, I did about 6 different photo shoots and 2 different illustration jobs, and one illustration job was comprised of just a myriad of images that ended up in an animation. But really, it truly is about the art buying for me. I mean, looking for the right. The creative director sent this little screen grab of an image from the New York Times. I knew exactly who it was, and then was able to just call that person and start a conversation. So it's so wonderful when people recognize exactly what they want, and then you're actually able to get it
Yeah.
and know the person to call, or they have an idea for a photo shoot, and you see these concepts, and you can see it come to life, kind of in your brain, and what you think that they want, and then when you bring someone to the table and they say, yeah, this is exactly it. It's an exciting process, I think, for me.
And you're so fortunate because you see it from the very beginning to the very end. And I joke sometimes that, by the time the estimate is approved and things move into production, I'm on to the next thing. And I'm always the one, like, they forget to show it to me sometimes. Unless like it's, we're allowed to show it and then we're going to put it on the website or something. But, I'm always like, come on, like, how is the shoe? Can we see something? Oh, it's in post production, or, oh, like it's not ready yet. But like everybody else kind of gets to enjoy the moment of creating. And then Lorianne and I are, obviously on to the next thing because we're moving ahead and pushing forward. But you get to see it from the beginning to the end. And it's a pretty amazing, incredible process.
Yeah, it really is.
It's also an interesting process to watch the photographers evolve, having gone from like, you get a layout with one image, right? I want you to shoot this like this, to shooting a library, and watching them kind of evolve their skills into figuring out how to direct the scene. So you can kind of get those moments before the moment, and you're getting the hero image, but you're also getting all the other like complementary images for the library. So, it's been kind of, it's been happening a lot over the years. This is not a new thing, but it's been cool to be able to see that unfold.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Let's talk a little bit about production and what your clients are asking you to produce right now. Obviously with COVID, there's been so much on again, off again. Where are you right now in that process, and what are your clients comfortable doing?
Well, the clients that I'm working with right now are I just finished a shoot that was remote, but the clients were super excited about every step of the process, and I feel like everyone is ready to just get back and into it. I have not seen any pause really, other than I'm working on something right now where um, because we are following guidelines and we're not traveling for just, I think, the immediate future, we made a case to push back and sort of pause the production until uh, late March. And everybody really received it very well because I really think they wanted to be a part of it. We're shooting subject matter that's a little more unpredictable. So we definitely need to be there. And um, the idea that we would send someone on our behalf, there's just not that we don't trust our partners, but I think everybody really just wanted to lock arms and be there together. So I think everyone's excited to just jump back in
That's
and get
great.
to creating.
Yeah. And, gosh, I've always said this, but we really needed to pat ourselves on the back because we did such a great job as an industry in getting back on set and getting production moving again, and, finding ways to create, I always say this too, but relevant content within the constraints of the protocols. But, the idea of true collaboration and what that magic that happens on set, that was hard to recreate. We did it, but I love hearing people talk about how important it is to be on set together if they can do so safely, and if it means postponing a shoot. I hear people saying that they're doing that, and they're following through because they're not afraid to shoot. They just want to make sure that they can be there because a lot of these, what they're shooting they just don't want to do it remotely.
Yeah, and I always think that you know as much as you plan and as much as you're prescriptive and you're following comps, or as much as you're following everything that you've set out to do, there's just so much wonder in those unpredictable moments, or those moments where your your guard is down, and you might capture something that is truly important, and I don't think you can do
Yeah.
that if
No,
you're
you
just
want some spontaneity. You want
yeah.
some, something, like I said, that magical moment to happen and have us all be there and feel that energy and, you know, capture it.
Yeah, I think it definitely brings everybody closer when we are together and collaborating.
Well, let's talk about, I want to talk about estimating, and I want to talk about the selection process. Let's talk about estimating first. Do your clients give you budgets?
More or less, we understand a budget. A lot of times we're working in tandem with um, digital producers and broadcast producers, and we kind of strategically attack a job together in that respect. But I want to say that we know a neighborhood that we're living in.
And are you sharing that neighborhood with the people, with your vendors, or are you of the mindset that it's better to just kind of see what they come back with?
Well, I always want to see what people come back with, and I feel like I understand what things cost. So to me, it's important that people are able to bring numbers that they feel comfortable with to the table, and then I'll have a very honest conversation with them once I do get those numbers. So I feel even with reps that I don't know, I recently had something where they said, "Okay, well, can you tell me a ballpark?" And I said, I really want you to bring to the table what you would for your talent, and I'll let you know if this is way off, and then we can work together. But for the most part, everyone does come with what it costs, and we can just talk through it from there.
I'm very comfortable working in those parameters, especially with someone that I know, unless the budget is very challenged, right? So I trust that because I know your level of experience and you and I know each other, if you're just like, Heather, give me a budget and tell me what it costs and I'll come back to you, I'll be like, okay, I can do that. And I will be very fair. Especially if it's someone new or if it's a project we haven't, like a product we haven't worked on or a startup or something, it is very important for me to know the budget or at least know that we interpret a budget the same way. Because somebody might think $20,000 is a lot for a photo shoot, and I'm coming in with a $100,000 estimate. And I've just spent, 3 days of 5 people's time getting the bid done. And then I send it to them and they're like, oh God, no, we only have 20,000. And you're just like, why didn't you tell me that before? So I agree with you. I like when I'm given some freedom to just come in at a budget that we think is right without the constraints. But I also really appreciate knowing because then I can manage to a number if I had to.
Yes, I would definitely not allow you to spend 3 to 5 days on something that didn't take 3 to 5 days to gather information on. And I hope that no one else would, but there is something to be said about really wanting to hear what people are bringing to the table in terms of their numbers to see if they're in the same mind space and headspace. And I can tell you that it is I'm not shocked by what I'm getting. So I think it's really comforting to know that the people that I'm engaging with are reading the same sort of headlines that I am.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really great. How about production consultants? Do you work with them at all?
We work with cost consultants on some of our jobs, and we definitely are used to triple bidding jobs. I have worked extensively with cost consultants in the past, and recently, I have not. So I'm very used to it. I haven't heard production consultants. I've heard cost consultants, but maybe that's why I call it art buying and not art
No,
production.
I think it's a relatively new thing. And the only reason I'm calling them that is because I sit on the board of the AMA, which is the Artist Management Association. And we did a webinar with 3 cost consultants, and they are trying to call themselves production consultants now because they're really moving into the realm of these, partnerships with these agencies and these brands where they want to be seen as these, partners and not these, cost cutting, slashing, not caring roles in the process. And they've worked hard over the years and they're coming from, agency backgrounds and art production backgrounds. And they're bringing a lot more to the table than just kind of this procurement point of view. So they're starting to call themselves production consultants. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, having worked with cost consultants in the past, it's a conversation, and they hopefully come from production, and most of them do, so they understand what they're doing and what we're doing overall, and what things cost. But that will be really interesting.
Yeah, it was, when we hang up, I'll send you the link to the webinar. It was pretty fascinating. So yeah, you can listen to it if you want or watch it. Okay, so let's talk also kind of in the estimating process about treatments. Do you and your team like receiving them, or do you not need them? Tell me how you work at the Martin Agency in regards to treatments.
Oh, I think everybody loves treatments. Everybody loves treatments because everybody wants to see their ideas interpreted and see what talent will bring to the table. I can tell you that sometimes our timelines are just prohibitive of treatments. And that's a shame. But I do think that even photographers will scramble and at least gather photography that's applicable to what we're doing. So it shows that they're living in that kind of world of what they're trying to achieve. Um, but I love knowing what photographers are thinking, and I love hearing how they would treat something or attack a task at hand. And I wish that we would have the time in all of our schedules to have the treatment phase.
Yeah, I mean, we have this love-hate relationship with treatments, I think. I think we, can really rise to the top with a stellar treatment, and it shows that we've listened and we're bringing to the table. But they take so long. And I've heard photographers say, which I think is really interesting, that when they lose a job after they've put all that time and energy and effort into a treatment, it hurts even more because they feel like they've produced the job. They feel like they've gotten their head right into the vision, and then when they're not chosen, it's a bit bigger of a blow. So I think we're trying internally to help our photographers manage their time and how much of that is put into a treatment. Um, so what advice do you have for a photographer who just really wants it to be, perfect and the best and really showcasing everything they have in their mind about this project, yet balancing it with photo shoots and travel that they're doing and family time, and they're doing these on the weekends and at night and on airplanes, and um, what advice do you have for them? Like, maybe what's the meat of what you look for? What are the most important parts? What should they concentrate on?
Well, knowing that I haven't uh, asked for treatments in so long, and maybe I'm one of the only people that loves them because really, I mean, I definitely do not want photographers to feel, that breakup scenario. But I think that having your work. I mean, obviously, on people's sites, it's so hard. What's the old adage about like the cobbler's children not having any shoes? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's so hard when you are trying to do all of your upkeep. I mean, I know that I would reach out to someone and be very specific and say, do you have anything that represents this, that, or the other in order to tell the story? Have you shot something on your phone recently? Have you done anything that can, really speak to what we're going after? Um, and I like to talk to the photographer or the rep and just, really understand how I can help, you know, showcase them the best. But I think my advice is, your work really, really sells itself. And I think that's really the bottom line. I have not had moments with creatives where they have really astute, sensibility, and they can see in the work the potential.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a fine balance, and we're working through it for sure. And I think agencies are recognizing as well, the effort and the time that's being put on it. And on our end, we're getting better at asking the question, "What is it that's most important for you in this particular treatment?" So that we're not trying to, touch on absolutely everything. Okay, so what about when you're choosing a photographer in the first place to get on your consideration list for this job? What are your criteria? How have you found them? How do they stay on your radar? Things are really hard right now. Obviously, you're not meeting with a lot of different people. We're not having portfolio shows, but how do you stay up to date on work and then ultimately choose people for the project?
Well, I really consider myself to be someone who is just constantly looking and revisiting sites, and I read a lot. I I read a lot of editorial. I visit photography sites like just PDN, or I'll go down a rabbit hole sometimes and just click through lots of different art websites, and then I'll stumble across things, and then it will remind me of other things. And um, I think that that is something that I just have an appetite for. And I always want to check up on, who's in this roster. And, I've heard that they've broken up, and, now that they're with this person. And then I'll stumble onto another rep's website and, oh, I didn't know this person came here. And I think that I try to keep myself abreast of what's happening through that personal sort of work. But I also really try to stay connected to my email, and um, it's very strange because I didn't have any social media prior to coming back to Martin, because I was trying to prove a point to my kids. And here I am back on Instagram, and they call me grandma all the time because I'll say, like, wait, how do you click and they'll look at me, and I just, oh my gosh. I definitely have subscribed to different art sites and galleries. And I do spend a lot of time on gallery sites that support photographers, and then I find what they're doing commercially. So I sometimes go about it in lots of different ways. But I do tend to keep up. And I'm a big proponent of supporting the local talent as well, because, everyone is from somewhere. And it's really funny. I always just think about when, living in New York for so many years, you never eat in the restaurant that's in your building, because why would you do that? Um, and it really is, I don't want to do that. Being from Richmond, we have so many great photographers here. And, Virginia alone. But I think it's important to show the community, how that is important too.
I totally agree. Lorianne and I used to joke, back in the 90s, when things were just like hopping creatively here in San Francisco. We would laugh because there was so much great work coming out of here and all the agencies here. And we would get definitely some good jobs. I'm not complaining by any means, but it'd be like, wait, why are you bringing that photographer in from London? Why are you bringing that photographer in from New York? You've got so much great talent here in San Francisco. But it's like, your own backyard, sometimes you forget. You think you have to go elsewhere, but you've got some really talented people right where you are.
Yeah, it's so true.
So is there anything you feel like clients or agencies, well, actually, let me ask this differently. Are you feeling like there's anything that photographers and reps should be better educated about in terms of the review process? Is there anything you think we're missing or would help us understand what you're kind of up against when you're reviewing photographers for a project? Or maybe let's say for the estimating process, that might be a bit of an easier. Like, what are you up against when you've got those three bids and you've got to present three equally amazing people to your client, because you don't know, they might choose the one that you're not going to recommend. What's happening in that process that we may, would help us?
Well, obviously, calendars. I'm very transparent with people in letting them know when the team and client would like to shoot. And obviously that's the first kind of, people want to be brought to the job, and then, there's a conversation around, well, we'll make it happen if we get the job. But, that's kind of in the back of your brain. So I think, having an open calendar leads to flexibility on our side, because we don't know if the job's going to push. And
Yeah.
so I think in a perfect world, obviously your calendars are free, and you have your favorite crew available, and all of these things. I don't know. I think that is I got to say, I think my teams are so fair and so supportive of people that we bring to the table because they choose them for a reason. That it is sometimes like, you know, the best person will win because they've all decided. Someone makes the argument. It's a really difficult thing to put my finger on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say that what I would love for creatives and agencies and teams to understand from our point of view is that, and I would say the majority of people that we work with absolutely get this. This is not even a hesitation for them, but for the few who don't, it does make for a bit of a challenging experience. But the communication in terms of keeping us updated on what's happening on your end. Oh, the client meeting got pushed. Oh, the client is, we've narrowed it down to two. You're one of the two, or you're not one of the two, or oh shoot, I'm so sorry you didn't get the job, and here's why you did not get the job. Not just we're going in a different direction, or we've decided to shoot with someone we've shot with in the past. But just I always say one more sentence goes a long way. So I think for those people who are listening out there, especially photographers, encouraging the people that you're working with to get to remind them to keep us posted on what's going on.
Oh, yeah. I am definitely, I think, an over communicator where I think it all kind of the ticker mentality on the CNN, like even if it hasn't changed, I try to let people know what's going on because I understand it's, you're waiting to hear and you want to know. So I do ask my creatives, so tell me what was the nuance here, and I really try to give honest, reasons behind why someone didn't get the job or why someone got the job over the other person. I think it's important because then, at least it's like when someone breaks up with you and you don't know why, and then you start doing all
Right.
this crazy soul searching instead of like, oh, it's because you didn't like my hair or,
Right.
whatever. Give me something I can hold on to.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's super helpful. And that kind of, creative, constructive criticism or constructive feedback is so important. It goes such a long way. And I know, it's not your job to make my photographers better at their job. But like I said, that one little extra sentence is so helpful moving forward in the future for us in the future.
yeah, it's really interesting because recently there was something that happened where one of my creative directors said, wow, why does this person want to do this job? And my simple answer was, well, he's a photographer and he really wants to work and he really wants to shoot photography. Because I think in a lot of ways, sometimes they think that this is beneath somebody or, why would they want to do this job when they've done all these jobs? And, part of me is thinking like, photographers put work in their book. And yes, they've shot a lot of famous people, but that doesn't mean that they do that all the time.
Right.
So I think, one of the reasons why you showcase certain things in your book is not always the reason why you're wanting to shoot a certain job. And it's interesting people's perception of portfolios. If they see a famous person or they see a really big luxury brand, then they all of a sudden, um, stop themselves and say, well, why would they want to shoot
Yeah.
this? Or,
Or they have a perception of a photographer as super high end or very
yeah,
expensive because the campaigns they've worked on, or maybe the great job a rep has done, and making it look like they've shot only big high expensive jobs. Um, but it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes a photographer, just like you said, they just want to shoot and they're so excited to team with and collaborate with a creative person
yes,
that like bring it on. I'm always like, don't worry about the budget. Bring me the job. If I can't produce it in the manner in which you want, because there's not enough money, I will tell you. But if my
Yes.
photographer has a chance to sink their teeth into something really incredibly creative, I mean, that is a chance of a lifetime. I had a photographer today share a video with me that they had only $30,000 to shoot this video. And it's a way more expensive job than that. And he was like, I knew this was going to be amazing. I was willing to put some of my own money in this. And he's like, because I know it's going to get me more work. And not only that, it was like creatively so fulfilling. And I watched the video today and I called him. I was like, okay, I couldn't just text you and tell you this was amazing. He's like, I'm like, I actually got weepy and I don't know why. Like you created something so powerful here. And he's like, yeah, if I had said no to this because of the budget, he's like, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Like I wouldn't have had this. So like, and he's like, it's one of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever done. And like that, they're looking for that.
Yeah, I love that. And, I will say that my creative director recently was presenting, the photographer books. And he said, look, these photographers look like they've shot this, this, and this, but photographers want to shoot. And it was so heartfelt. And it was so the essence of like, oh man, this is why I'm doing what I do.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it's not a desperation. It's not like,
no,
oh, I have to shoot. I need the money. It's, can you just give me something? Like, can we partner? Not give me.
yes.
Can we partner on something creative together? That is all they want to do. Because a lot of times they do take jobs because of the money, right? They're commercial photographers. They're in the business. They're professional photographers. They're in the business to make money. This is not a hobby for them. So sometimes they have to take jobs that are not very creatively fulfilling. So when one comes along, that's like, they're thrilled for that opportunity.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that to me was it was so wonderful just to have that, to see that conversation happen and for them to understand that too. And so the more we can educate in that respect, I think the more photographers and they'll keep shooting and for the right
Yep.
reasons.
I totally agree. Well, before we wrap up, I always ask the same two questions, and I just love the people's varied answers. The first one is, what is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And the other is, if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
Ooh, gosh, my favorite thing to do on a Sunday is curl up and get lost in I play movie roulette where I just turn the television on and watch something that's on. And it's really silly, but it's luxurious. I also love to, I watch a lot of sports that my kids play in. I think I've been to 5 basketball games this week.
Oh my gosh.
So there's always sports involved, whether it's on television or in real life. So just spending time with my family, it's kind of my favorite thing. And what I would do if I weren't a producer, well, my husband and I bought an old farmhouse. It was our pandemic hobby, I guess, or project. And it's a little Airbnb, and it was so fun to do. I think that would be my calling.
Oh, I like that. There's producer traits in that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I feel like once you're a producer, you're probably never not a producer. So
yes, I think that's so true.
That's great. Well, Anya, it has been so nice to connect with you again. And I just loved having you as a guest here today. And your insights were really wonderful. And you kind of charged me up to be out there looking for those next creative opportunities. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Heather. I really loved being here.
Absolutely. Have an awesome weekend.
You too.